And so I hope you didn't come to sit passively because we're going to be quite interactive today. And so it's one of the goals of Active Minds to actually generate dialogue about student pressures and mental health issues on college campuses. And so I'll be speaking with that goal in mind. And those of you who know me know that I'm a big picture person, and so I like to expand how people think about things. Helping to make conscious the things that we are trained to keep unconscious, and allowing us to question the things that we think of as normal, such as the fact that the belief that there's only two genders. And so that's what we'll be doing today. And so my talk will have three sections. One is about what we are taught, the second is about how we cope, and the third is about how we can heal. And the end of each will have a little pair share, so you'll have a chance to talk to each other. And so let's go ahead and jump in. All right, so American culture is extremely goal-oriented, and so hence future-oriented. And we are taught that our happiness is dependent upon achieving certain external outcomes, such as a successful career, lots of money, the perfect relationship, a nice house. And so we tend to postpone our happiness, doing whatever we need to do in order to achieve our goal, telling ourselves that we will get our reward later. And this process is generally joyless. And so we approach it with kind of a grin and bear it kind of attitude. And so while we may be successful in obtaining the external things that we aim for, then the experience of happiness that we promised ourselves oftentimes remains elusive. And so by the time that we reach our goal, then we may not even stop to celebrate it, because we have already moved on to our next goal and the next after that. And so when we affirm to ourselves that we will be happy when we reach our goals, then we perpetuate a state of waiting to be happy. And so we create lives that are always striving to be happy, but never just being happy. And when we live for a future goal, then we are more inclined to settle for an unsatisfying present, believing that the end justifies the means. And so then we don't listen to the feelings of pain and unhappiness that we are having that are actually signals from our inner guidance that what we are doing is not in harmony with our highest good. And so we grit our teeth and bear it because we believe in some future time then we will be rewarded. And so we put in our time, whether at a job that we don't like or in a relationship, hoping that the person will eventually be able to be more able to meet our needs, or the latest fad diet, oblivious to the suffering that it is causing us in the present. And so this is some of what we're taught. Nothing can be accomplished without goals. Doing is the linear path to all outcomes. We must be doing at all times. My worth is determined by my productivity. Work now and reward later, and you may notice that this is always moving, and so I notice this in the academic world especially, where you're always told, like, oh, you just have to reach this next goal, and then it's all going to be great, it's all going to get better. And so when I was at University of Missouri in a tenure track position as a junior faculty person, I was having dinner simultaneously with somebody who was finishing their dissertation and somebody who had just gotten tenure. And they were both in these moments where they had been told, like, oh, now you've arrived, and like now you can enjoy the fruits of your labors. And I knew, because I also had a college advisor who was going through a post-tenure review, that that process never ends. Like they pretend like once you achieve this particular benchmark, that somehow then you will have arrived, but you never actually arrive because it just continues and the carrot keeps moving. Of course, no pain, no gain. And then our motivation for this is twofold. One is self-discipline, and the other is future happiness. And so this is how to have a successful life according to American culture, which is entirely rooted in living for the future. And so some of the specific things that we attach to: I will be happy when I lose the weight, get in shape, have the perfect body. I will be happy when I get the job, get the grades, have the money, have the status. And I will be happy when I have the attention, or the fame, or the love, or the relationship that I want. There's just a couple images, and very gendered concepts. It's very interesting to me that like the gain for women is supposed to be like big boobs. So these are some of the things that we're taught about happiness. Happiness requires sacrifice, first of all, it obviously requires money, it requires physical perfection, and it requires external affirmation. And so happiness is always found in external things. And here's a couple of ads of that. And so also in the academic environment, we have a lot of assumptions about excellence. So I just wanted to bring that into the situation as well, because this is a lot of the kind of standards that students are grappling with in the classroom as well as in the broader context, even though obviously there are multiple other kinds of standards, peer standards and beauty standards, that are also an aspect of it. So excellence can and should be measured and quantitatively. Excellence is determined by others, not by the self. Excellence is hierarchical, and so people should be ranked. People perform best under pressure. This is especially big in sports. I had a high school basketball coach who basically, his main coaching strategy was just to scream at us. And he would come in at halftime and throw his keys across the room, and this was supposed to motivate us. And for me, I was very shy and very sensitive, and so that just shut me down. All I could do to not be in tears and want to go home. But this is seen as especially for masculine embodied people, this is the way to get people to somehow do their best, is by mocking them and humiliating them. People perform best through competition, and so if we're not in competition with one another, then somehow we're not motivated to do our best. And if we didn't force people to perform, then somehow they would be lazy. And so this also is an aspect of our economic situation, the belief that if people were not forced to have a job, then somehow we'd just all be at home watching soap operas, and that would be our inclination in life. So this particular talk came out of a week that I do in one of my classes. And so this last fall, then I was so struck by the free writes that my students had submitted about the things that they were grappling with and the ways that they were grappling with them, that I put together a PowerPoint of quotations from their free writes so that they would have the opportunity, first of all, to see that this is not an individual problem, this is a systemic issue. And also so that they would feel not so alone, to kind of see their own feelings and their own words in the context of everybody else's words, and to see everybody's pretending, but everybody is largely going through a lot of the same things. And so in each of the three sections of the talk today, then there's going to be quotes from students, from CU students. So we are forced to have these large goals in mind, and most people come up with something just so they have something to say when they are asked, so what do you want to do? And the pressure gets increasingly intense as you get closer to graduation. Essentially, I'm bound by the university at this point, and considering that my debt is stacking up, I'm pretty much locked into this path. And that's a lot of the student debt crisis and the ways that it has exerted particular pressures on student majors. And so we see a lot of student majors going into oil and gas and pharmaceuticals and other industries that actually have a lot of societal consequences, because students feel pressure, I have this debt, I need to get a high-paying job right out of graduation so that I can start paying off my student loan. And so this is actually transferring people away from the humanities and away from other majors that actually have more of a positive social benefit. I tell myself it's a grind right now, but everyone has to pay their dues. I set many vague, unreachable goals for myself, like get all your work done, be successful, and apply yourself as much as possible. And so not surprising that we are continually feeling like we are failing when these are kind of our goals that can never actually be met. And I'm waiting on the next thing, for things to fall into place so that I can settle in and enjoy my happiness. Some of this comes from parents, and it's interesting in my classes when we talk about gender policing, it's a lot of free writes talk about comments that people have received from their moms. And in the stuff about living for the future, it was entirely about comments that people had received from their dads. When I see my dad, he promptly asks me if I'm looking into law schools yet. He doesn't ask how the current semester is going, because what is most important is that my plan is set for afterwards. I remind him that I'm still a sophomore and not interested in practicing law. What I would love to do is remind him that I am not him and don't want to be him. I really wanted to send this PowerPoint to the parents, actually, so they could see the impact that they were having on their kids without realizing. My father believes that once I am educated to the highest capacity, have a respectable career, and am financially stable, I will find the happiness he always wished for me. My father always asked me what my goals are, what grades I hope to get, what my plans are for after college. There is hardly any talk of the here and now and what I'm currently doing or feeling. Whenever I complain about being busy or tired, my dad always says that it's just part of this game we play. I always counter with, I don't want to play this game. And so these are some of the underlying assumptions my students had about kind of the linear path of if you want these particular kind of goodies at the end, this is how you have to get there. To be considered successful, we have to overwork ourselves to some degree. Without goals, you are wasting your potential and aren't going to get as much out of your experience as you could have. Happiness will come once I finally get into shape or graduate school. I do believe I'll be a lot happier once I overcome these things. I want to have enough money to be able to travel and a career that I care about, but in order to do all that, I have to be eligible to get a good job so I can make money, and to do that, I need to go to college and get good grades. This all leads to me putting in 15-hour days at school and not getting enough sleep. Is there any sort of system that allows people who live in the moment to succeed? As far as I know, there is not. Those who live in the moment are considered idealistic, starry-eyed, and naive. They almost have no place in society. And so there's some of the folks starting to realize, similar to the body image ideals, that these are kind of impossible standards, and maybe getting on this path is not actually going to take me where I think it might take me. We live for the future, striving for goals we set, thinking when we reach them we'll be happy. However, that's never quite the case. Take, for example, a diet or exercise routine. You work so hard to eat well and get fit, but when you finally reach your goal, you're still critical of how you look, comparing yourself to others and wishing that you look like them. I'm in school because I want a good job so I can support myself and my family that I don't yet have and can't even imagine. I'm getting jobs and internships so that I can have experience for the jobs that I'm not even sure I want. Sometimes I have to sit back and wonder, is this all worth it? And then these are some of the results. So a lot of anxiety and feeling like you're continually failing, feeling like you can't keep up. A lot of shame because everybody feels like they're failing. And a lot of isolation because you can't talk about all the ways that you feel like you're failing and that you're suffering in shame because you feel like you're the only one. And so oftentimes snowball of depression. I see this a lot with students who won't come to class because maybe there's a paper due that day. They didn't finish their paper, and so like, oh, I can't come to class because I didn't finish my paper, or I didn't do the reading that day. So then they don't go to class, and then from not going to class, then they feel further behind, and so they're like, oh, now I can't go back to class because I missed the last class because I didn't have my paper on time, and it just creates this like massive snowball until like 2 weeks later, then they come to me crying of like, I'm so far behind, I feel so overwhelmed. And it's like, just stop that cycle. Like if you don't have your paper, then come to class. Like don't miss class on top of that. Like we could negotiate about how you're going to get your paper done, but don't allow it to keep continuing because those feelings of failure, like every choice that we make creates momentum in some direction. And so if we are taking steps towards our dreams, it becomes easier to take steps towards that. And if we take steps towards our fear, then that creates a downward spiral that then it gets harder and harder to get out of that. We're not allowed to even question these standards and assumptions, or to even wonder, like, is that even what I really want? Because we're just told, like, that's happiness, like, that's what you have to choose. So we see a lot of poor performance, because people aren't motivated, people are terrified, people are, living in panic and anxiety. I have students that whenever I assign creative assignments in class, then they come in and they're just like, they can't even function because it's like, I don't know how to do this type of assignment, I feel like it's going to go badly, and so I'm just paralyzed in my fear. And so I have to kind of like, be like, okay, just give it a try, we'll see how it goes. If you don't like it, then you can do something else, but let's kind of move past where you feel stuck in this paralysis. And obviously a lack of enjoyment, because this is a lot of drudgery and nobody's enjoying the process. And as a teacher, this really upsets me because I feel like learning should be one of the most joyful and satisfying things that we do as humans. And the fact that that is so messed up in our educational system, to me, is really, really criminal. And it's really hard to mess it up that badly because learning is something that is actually super enjoyable. And so that we have turned it into something that is terrifying and something that is a form of drudgery to me, and that we're not talking about this is really, really upsetting. So these are some more student quotes about how it feels. I feel like butter scraped over too much bread. Society, the people around me, and myself create these unrealistic expectations for what the future is supposed to hold and benchmark times for when things are supposed to be done. When these things aren't met, it creates such a strong sense of failure that it's sometimes hard to continue working. Living for the future causes me to be apathetic to the moment. This mindset causes me to live 45 years in the future. And many of my students really do have the stress levels and the lifestyles of like middle-aged people because they are so burdened with so many responsibilities. When achieving a goal, I am already working on the next one, and when taking a break from it all, I feel unease. Stress accompanies me almost on a daily basis, and events that should be generating joy turn into obligations. These are some of the physical consequences. With regards to sleep, as a result of my coping, my sleep has really been affected. My anxiety is always high. I have overrun, overexhausted, and worn my body to reach that daily standard of using every second purposefully. It has left me stretched thin, tired, and feeling like I have accomplished nothing. This is like mostly 20-year-olds. I mean, this is really, really disturbing. And people who largely have the idea that this is all going to change when I graduate. Like, I have no free time now, but somehow when I graduate, that my life is actually going to get better and easier, which I don't want to like break their hearts, so I'm like, this is the most amount of free time you're ever going to have in your entire life. And so that you're not getting to experience any joy out of it now, and that you're like rushing to get through it is really also disturbing to me. I remember saying to my friends and family over the summer that if the semester went any longer, I would probably die, most likely from stress. And I shared this with my mom, and she was like, oh my gosh, like, you know, what's wrong with this student? And I was like, no, this is most of my students now. Like, this is the reality that most of my students are living. I think the cost of living in this fast-paced, stressed-out manner is that eventually I'm going to get burned out. And I think that is going to happen sooner rather than later. Essentially, I value doing well more than I do being well. The emotional consequences. I felt so alone last semester as I was telling myself that I couldn't hang out with friends when they asked because I had too much to do for classes. Then I would wonder why they eventually stopped asking. The time I spend relaxing is time I should be spending working, and so my stress increases. The anxiety I experience is because I spend too much time focusing on the future, and the depression I feel is because I spend so much time in the past. My mother is an alcoholic, and in many ways, I've begun to cope in the way she demonstrated for me. I drink, I use substances, I throw myself into many different things, I keep my distance from people so that they view my life as idyllic. So just a ton of pretending going on. And finally, this mentality of really like trying to get life over with. I do things with I want to get this done or over with as fast as humanly possible so that I can cross it off my list mentality. I literally cannot remember the last time I was doing a task and not thinking, I cannot wait until this is over so that I can do the next task. I am missing out. I am not living for the now, and this will cause regret when the now is over and done with, and I wish it wasn't. I am coping so that I can get through whatever it is I am doing so that I can make it to the next thing. I am constantly looking for what is coming next. It's almost as if all these things are hurdles. I am jumping from hurdle to hurdle. I remember being in middle and high school and longing so desperately to be at university. And now that I'm here, I'm being rushed out. And finally, recently, I've been feeling an almost preemptive nostalgia for my college years. So a meme from Janine Roth, the ways that we're trained to want, and not to actually be in the present moment and to enjoy what we have. All right, so our first pair share. So turn to somebody around you and talk about how do you feel like you're living for the future. What did you identify with in the quotes? What pressures are you feeling from parents, from teachers, peers, the media, from yourself?
What do you think? What do you know about? Oh my gosh, yes. Well, a lot of the quotes in general, but more like the overall idea of what he was just talking about, the physical and emotional consequences of trying to live for the future. And like me wondering if a big part of the consequences of that is because we're going to college and like most people during my parents' time, you weren't going into tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars of student debt for that. So now everybody's, even if you're working full-time or having a full-time course schedule just like they did, like you feel like, okay, this whole semester I'm gonna get $30,000 in debt, so I should obviously spend every moment I can, not only working as hard as I can, getting the A's, making sure I'm making the right choices, picking the right career that's not only gonna make me happy, but make me like respectable and also able to pay off my debt. And like maybe buy a boat. Yeah. Like I just think that's probably one of the biggest differences in our college atmosphere, and why 20-year-olds are like feeling this way. I think it's a big part of it. Part of why their parents are asking, what are you going to do when you're done? What are you going to do when you're done? Because they're thinking, how are you going to pay off this debt when you're done? Because most students aren't debt as well, but just like kids students, right? So parents too. Parents are responsible for half their students.
It's crazy. It's crazy to hear like coming from. I don't think I even like I had. Even if I just law school, I'm like, this is my last semester.